Egypt. Empire of the Pharaohs. So, Egyptian civilization itself actually dates back to at least 3400 BCE. Egyptian history is divided into 33 dynasties, 3 kingdoms, and multiple periods. And only in some of these portions was Egypt actually an empire. During others, such as its decline in the Ptolemaic period, it was actually part of other empires. So, let us begin. The pre-dynastic Egypt. This is Egypt before there was any pharaohs. So Egypt was originally 2 separate kingdoms. Upper Egypt, which is actually in the south, and Lower Egypt, which is in the north. Egyptians determined upper and lower based on upriver or downriver on the Nile. Since the Nile flows northward, Upper Egypt is actually south or upriver of Lower Egypt. King Narmer united both kingdoms, as pictured in the Palette of Narmer. It's in this time that we see the beginnings of deliberate mummification of bodies and the Egyptian polytheistic religion centered around the god Horus, Osiris, Ptah, and whatnot. Now, also hieroglyphs are developed. This is Egyptian's pictographic language. Now, Egypt is a river valley civilization, which pretty much means that the life source of Egypt is the Nile. They grew up growing crops on the fertile banks of the Nile, which are fertile because of the silt deposited, particularly in the delta, when the Nile overflows its banks. Now, the next period is New Kingdom, Old Kingdom Egypt. This is around circa 2686 to 2134. This is when the mastabas, which are pictured in the upper right-hand corner, were sort of just basic coverings over the grave that had a shaft that would lead down to the burial chamber, eventually were built up on and transformed into pyramids. The man responsible for doing this was Imhotep, Egyptian architect. The Old Kingdom collapsed in 2134, roughly contemporary to the collapse of Ur and the Indus Valley civilization. So Egypt is then restored under the Middle Kingdom. And then after the Middle Kingdom falls, the Middle Kingdom kind of just lasts for a few years until 1850 BCE, when they collapse. Egypt is still a kingdom at this point. It is not a proper empire. The Hyksos invasion. So from 1850 to 1550 BCE, the Hyksos invade. The term Hyksos means kings of foreign lands. Most of them are believed to be Canaanite in origin. Some are Hebrew and related to the Israelites. Others are related to other Canaanite peoples. Maybe even Edomites or Moabites and Amalekites are in there. It's a mix. These people come down and they rule Egypt. They never rule the entire thing. They only rule the northern half, Lower Egypt, around the fertile delta, particularly around Goshen. They were masters of bronze weapons and chariot warfare. Up until this point, Egyptians did not have chariots. The Hyksos were the first to introduce them. And as a result, the Egyptians would later adopt the Canaanite model of chariots, which focuses on a 2-man system of a rider, basically of a driver and an archer. So the Hyksos are eventually driven out in 1550, and this is the beginning of the New Kingdom. This is the 18th, 19th, and to some extent the 20th dynasty. And this is when Egypt reaches its peak of power. This is Imperial Egypt. At this time, its height of power is under Ramesses II of the 19th dynasty, where the empire stretches all the way from the 12th cataract of the Nile, so almost into what's now Ethiopia, all the way as far north as parts of Syria and the Euphrates River. Canaan, and that whole area, and Midian are all Egyptian possessions. This is one of the most powerful periods in Egypt's history. This is when we can refer to an Egyptian empire. The 2 most powerful pharaohs of this period were Ramses II, and prior to him it was Thutmose III. Unfortunately, the New Kingdom collapses. And there are some reasons for this. The first of these reasons for the decline is the invasion of what are called the Sea People. nondescript group of individuals hailing from various parts of the world, parts of Troy, parts of Lydia, Minoa, Greece. These people just kind of invade. After that, Egypt basically goes through the period of being essentially conquered by various empires. The Nubians come up, as pictured over here. The Nubians come up. They're also later conquered by the Assyrians. The Babylonians try to conquer them several times. And even the Achaemenid Persians eventually, for periods, control Egypt as part of their empires. And lastly, there is Ptolemaic Egypt. So Persia controlled Egypt on and off until Persia was eventually invaded by Alexander the Great. After Alexander's death, his general Ptolemy took over Egypt, and Egypt became a Greek kingdom. Ptolemaic Egypt is kind of the last independent period of Egypt in the ancient world. After the collapse of the Ptolemaic period, following the death of Cleopatra, its last queen, Egypt became a Roman province. And from that point onward, for the rest of antiquity, Egypt was rather part of the Roman Empire. So that's the extent of Egypt. I hope you found that useful.